"Seth, you've made another mistake in the documents." The voice of my female boss, Manager Chloe, echoed in the office. I immediately stood up and headed towards her desk. "Where's the mistake?" "The amount. The discount is supposed to be 15%, not 20%. But I checked with you about this the other day, Chloe, and you gave it the okay." "I don't remember giving the okay for that. Don't blame your mistake on me. Correct it right away." Despite Chloe's insistence, I was sure she had given the okay. She's always like this. She changes her mind constantly and forgets what she says. But she always insists she's right and never backs down. Our bosses like her common in every company. "I'm sorry." Reluctantly, I apologized, went back to my desk, and began correcting the documents. "My name is Seth. I'm 38, single, with no girlfriend. I work in sales at a cosmetics manufacturer. The cosmetics industry is predominantly female, and so is our company, with women making up 70% of the staff. There's a deep reason why I entered this industry. When I was a college student, my mother, who raised me single-handedly, passed away. She had worked at a cosmetics counter in a department store for many years, always meticulously made up every day before work. Even when her illness worsened and she was hospitalized, she never missed her daily makeup routine. When I put on my makeup and see my done-up face, it really boosts my confidence and makes me feel so happy, my mother used to say. Looking at a reflection in the large hand mirror, that's what my mom would say. Makeup isn't just for showing off to someone else, it's for women to have confidence in themselves and to live each day joyfully. My mother loved her job. She worked with conviction and pride. I wanted to be involved in the cosmetics work that my mother loved so much. Even now, 15 years after she passed away and I joined this company, I can't forget the smile on my mother's face, happy to see her made-up face in the mirror. Just as my mother said, I want to help many people enjoy makeup. That's what I think about as I work. The job is fulfilling and fun, but my manager Chloe has always been a thorn in my side. She is 42, 4 years my senior, and had been in a different department up until 3 months ago when a personnel transfer made her my supervisor. Since then, she's taken every chance to scold me, sometimes even with a mean spirit. She's married and likes to poke fun at me for being single. It's concerning to be single at 38. Do you have a personality defect or something? She said to me once. That's none of your business and quite rude, don't you think? I retorted, but she wouldn't listen. What's that tone? I'm just stating facts. Are you talking back to your boss? I was just dumbfounded by her audacity. One night, like always, Chloe ordered me to work overtime, and I was left alone in the office late into the night. The work she dumped on me was voluminous, and it was deep into the night before I knew it, with the last train almost due. Oh no, it's so late. I can't stay here all night. I need to get home before the trains stop. In a rush, I closed up the office and headed to the nearest station. When did it start raining? Good thing I brought my fold-up umbrella. With my umbrella up, I hurried to the station and bumped into someone at the ticket gate. Sorry. No, my fault, I'm sorry, the woman I bumped into replied. The person I bumped into was a woman in her 30s, wearing a suit, drenched from head to toe. She must have been caught in the rain without an umbrella. As I went through the gate, an announcement indicated the last train had just left. I was so close, yet I didn't make it. No choice but to leave the station and head for the taxi stand. There, the woman I had bumped into earlier was walking in the same direction. When I got in line for a taxi, she lined up right behind me. Her hair was dripping wet, and she looked very cold. I wanted to do something for her but had no towel to offer, so I stood there, feeling concerned but helpless. When my turn came, and the taxi arrived, I addressed the woman behind me. If you'd like, Please go ahead of me. Really? Are you sure? Yes, you're so drenched. You should get home quickly. Thank you so much. She bowed deeply and got into the taxi. Watching the taxi drive away, I hoped she wouldn't catch a cold. A few days later, as usual, I arrived at work only to be greeted by Chloe shouting, "Seth, because of you, an important deal has been ruined." What happened? Don't play dumb. The materials you prepared were for the wrong product. Theo from the client side was furious. But I'm sure I prepared the exact materials for the product you told me, Chloe. However, Chloe insisted it was my mistake and wouldn't budge. Just prepare new materials right away. As soon as they're ready, we're going to apologize to them. I don't know if they'll forgive us, but hurry up. So, I had no choice but to redo the materials. Once ready, I headed to the client's company with Chloe. The company was the head office of a popular retail chain among young people. Chloe was presenting there to get our products placed in their stores. Theo, the person in charge, frowned upon seeing us. If it's about yesterday's matter, we've already decided on another manufacturer. Please leave. Please don't say that. Just take a look at the materials at least, please. With that, Chloe bowed her head. I bowed mine as well. I'm terribly sorry about yesterday. We've prepared new materials. Please, take a moment to consider them. But Theo wouldn't even take the materials. We don't need them. Just go back, please. That's when it happened. President Tyler, how are you? Theo suddenly bowed to someone behind us. I instinctively turned around, and there she was, the woman I had given my taxi to the other day. You're the person from the other day. She looked at me with wide eyes. President Tyler, do you know him? Theo asked, and she nodded emphatically. That lady was the president of this company. I was stunned in disbelief. This gentleman helped me out when I was in a lot of trouble, she said, looking at me again. Do you have a moment to spare? She asked. Yes, of course, I replied. I sent Chloe back first and followed the lady. She led me to the president's office. Please come in, she invited me in. That's when she formally introduced herself. I'm Hannah Tyler, and the president of this company, she said. I'm Zach from Candid Cosmetics. I introduced myself. We exchanged business cards. I can't believe you're the president here. What a coincidence, I said. It really is a surprise to meet you here again. I was quite startled, Hannah said, looking at the business card I had given her. Seth, I would really like to thank you again for yesterday. Would you care to join me for dinner tonight? She offered. That's a bit much for just letting you go first in the taxi line, I said modestly. No, it's not an exaggeration at all. I was caught in the rain unexpectedly that day and was so embarrassed to be soaking wet. Thanks to you, I was able to get home quickly, and it really helped me out. Please, let me treat you to dinner, just this once. She insisted with such sincerity that I found it hard to refuse. And after all, she was the president of a crucial business partner. Reluctantly, I accepted her dinner invitation. I returned to my company, finished my work on time, and went to the meeting place. According to Chloe, Hannah looks to be in her 30s but is actually 45 and single. She started her own company when she was young and has grown it significantly, a true career woman. The restaurant she had chosen was an upscale French restaurant. After giving my name, I was led to a private room where Hannah was already waiting. I apologize for keeping you waiting. No, I just got here myself. I'm honored to be invited to such a nice place. No worries. I'm the one who should be thankful to you, Seth. It's just a token of my gratitude. Gratitude? For something as simple as giving up my spot in the taxi line. As I voiced my confusion, her expression turned a bit sad. Let's order something to drink and toast. While we eat, let's talk at our leisure. With that, I ordered red wine from the server. Hannah chose a white wine. Before long, our drinks and dishes arrived, and we toasted. The food was exquisitely flavored, like nothing I'd ever eaten before. At first, Hannah made light small talk, but eventually, she started explaining why she was so grateful to me. My mother had been hospitalized with a stroke, and on the day I met you, I got a call from the hospital that she was critical. I was at work but rushed out in a panic. Then it started to rain. I didn't have an umbrella and didn't want to waste time buying one at a convenience store, so I ran to the station in the rain. That's when she bumped into me. She missed the last train and ended up in line for a taxi. In hindsight, I should have taken a taxi from the start, but I was so flustered at the time. She said with a rueful laugh. But thanks to you letting me go first for the taxi, I was able to be there for my mother's last moments. If I had been a bit later, I wouldn't have made it. Thanks to you, I was able to talk to her and say what I needed to. She continued and took a handkerchief from her purse to dab away the tears welling up in her eyes. I'm so sorry to hear that. I don't even know the right words to offer my condolences. I was stunned to learn that my simple act of giving up a taxi had allowed her to be with her parent in their final moments. At the time, I was only worried she might catch a cold from being so drenched, but knowing now that something much more serious was happening, I'm truly glad I didn't go ahead of her that day. Anyway, I really can't thank you enough, Hannah said, bowing deeply. No, I really didn't do anything significant, but if it's okay with you, may I know about what kind of person your mother was? I asked. Her eyes, wet with tears, lit up as she looked at me. Would you really like to know? She asked. Yes, of course, I would love to know, I encouraged her. Then Hannah shared detailed memories of her mother. Her family lost her father early on, and her mother raised her single-handedly. I could really empathize with her situation because it was just like mine. Her mother was apparently a nurse. She would wake up early every day to make breakfast and lunch, and despite being tired after returning from work, she would still make dinner and take care of all the household chores like cleaning and laundry. As a child, she said she never saw her mother rest. Even on days when her mother felt unwell, she would take medicine and persevere. Seeing her mother's dedication, she was inspired to earn money and give her mother a comfortable life. At 28, she took a leap and started her own company, becoming a president. Her mother continued nursing until retirement and then supported her by taking care of the household. Why don't you hire a housekeeper with all the money you have? I enjoy taking care of you, her mother would say, continuing to do the housework. She was an excellent cook, and her homemade dishes were delicious. Hannah, busy with her work after becoming president, never had the chance to learn cooking from her mother. For Hannah's sake, her mother had written down secret recipes in a notebook. You're not good at cooking, right? That's why I've written down recipes for various dishes in this notebook, from lasagna that you've always loved, to mashed potatoes, to chili con carne. Everything you need to know to make them is right here. Thank you, Mom. After her mother fell ill with a stroke, she was unconscious and unable to communicate. But on the day she rushed to the hospital drenched from the rain, after receiving the critical notice. Mom, it's Hannah. Can you hear me? When she spoke, her mother opened her eyes and looked at her. She couldn't speak, but it seemed like she was listening to her daughter's voice. I believe my voice reached my mother in that moment, she said. Her mother had shed a single tear upon hearing her voice. I'm really glad I was able to express my gratitude to my mother for everything, she said as she dabbed her tears with a handkerchief. Hearing her story, I couldn't help but be reminded of my own mother and inadvertently began to cry as well. Seeing this, Hannah said with a voice full of tears, Seth, you're such a kind person. No, I replied. It's just that my mother also raised me by herself and passed away when I was in college, so I can really sympathize. Is that so? Please, tell me about your mother as well, she encouraged. Encouraged by her, I talked about my own mother. She listened empathetically. Then she said, Seth, I'd really like to stock your company's products in our stores. But Theo said he's already decided on another company. I can make space for it. That's within the president's discretion. Oh, but this isn't mixing personal with business. Actually, I've been personally interested in your products for a while. Could we talk about your cosmetics another time? Really? Thank you so much. This is how I managed to secure a new contract. And since it's with a popular chain store, it's bound to significantly boost our sales. When I later reported this to Chloe, she looked frustrated and said, Seth, you did better than I expected. After that, Hannah and I went out to eat together several times, and we hit it off and started dating. She is 7 years older than me, but you wouldn't know it from her youthful beauty. She's a bit strong-willed, but also has a kind heart. I fell for her completely. And 6 months after we started dating, I gathered my courage and proposed to her. Of course, she said yes. When I handed the wedding invitation to Chloe, she was so shocked her eyes nearly popped out. Wait, you and the president are getting married. What's going on? I didn't ask Chloe to give a speech at the wedding because I wasn't sure what she would say, so I asked the department head, Thomas, instead. Throughout the wedding, Chloe had a look of disbelief, and I couldn't help but laugh. Later, I transferred to my wife's company, became the head of the cosmetics division, and worked on developing collaboration products with famous manufacturers. Fate works in mysterious ways, and as I reflect on this, I continue to enjoy every moment with my wife. I'm really sorry for always being a nuisance. Thank you for being my partner all this time. A note left on the desk. That was the beginning of everything. My name is Jaden. I'm 30 years old. I work in the editorial department of a publishing company. I married my colleague Amy 3 years ago, and we're the so-called dinks. Dual income, no kids. Work and personal life are fulfilling. We had a good marriage, no complaints, or so I thought. One day, out of the blue, Amy left a divorce paper and a note and walked out of the house. There was no particular fight or any memory of blaming my wife. I was completely at a loss as to why she wanted a divorce. Going back in time a bit, I met Amy during the new employee training at work. I was in my 5th year at the company, and the junior I was in charge of was Amy, fresh out of university. Hello, I'm Amy. Nice to meet you. I was a bit worried about her being excessively cheerful and giggling without reason. As expected, she wasn't tall that into her job. Moreover, she was clumsy and made many mistakes, the epitome of a newbie who just couldn't get it right. Even though it was tough, I decided to make her a proper worker. I need to get a handle on her characteristics. So I started observing Amy closely. She was the type to answer questions before they were fully asked and then make mistakes. But Amy was earnest in everything she did and took on even the most troublesome tasks seriously. Just her presence in the office brightened the atmosphere. She was always smiling and never missed a greeting, and before I knew it, she became the idol of the workplace. Despite being her senior, I ended up learning from Amy. Being able to do your job isn't the only thing you need as a working adult. Being the kind of person others think, I wouldn't mind helping them, is also an important quality. Using her charm and communication skills, Amy gradually transformed into a capable worker. Working with her and guiding her passionately, I realized I was drawn to her. I didn't want to mix work with my personal life. I spent a year being a thorough mentor to Amy, drilling her in the ABCs of an editor. Then, the day I was no longer her mentor, I asked her out for a meal. Under the guise of a celebration for the end of her new employee training. Is it okay, Jaden? This place is famous. It's even been featured in magazines, right? Amy looked around worriedly. For a celebration, the place was obviously too extravagant. I cheerfully reassured her. It's on me today. It's a reward for your hard work this past year, so I went all out. With that, Amy smiled with relief. Even when being treated, she worries about the other person's financial situation. I liked that about her. We enjoyed a full course of famous French cuisine while talking about work. A tipsy Amy with her cheeks slightly pink was so cute it made my heart skip. After the dessert was brought out, as she was about to take a bite with a smile, I said, "To be honest, the whole celebration thing was just an excuse to ask you out. I want to ask you out for real, not just as senior and junior." Amy was gaping with her mouth wide open. Maybe it was no good. Just when I was about to get discouraged, Amy suddenly burst out laughing. "Of course, it's okay. Thank goodness, my one-year-long unrequited love has finally paid off." Amy's response nearly knocked me over. What an honest person she is. I found myself laughing along, feeling somehow relieved. For some reason, her boundless cheerfulness was my salvation. I was glad she was my partner. Even after we started dating, I kept thinking that. The serious and nervous me, and the bright and impatient Amy. If you add me together and divide by 2, we're perfect. So, please marry me. That's how I proposed to her. Amy, crying tears of joy, happily accepted, and we made it to marriage without a hitch. Even after marriage, Amy was like a runaway train. She'd acted on her desires and, without consulting me, immediately put her decisions into action. She'd suddenly decide on a trip, or I'd come home to find a new pet. I'd give her a smile, but gradually I learned to put a stop to Amy's antics. I could mostly understand what she was thinking, and preemptively stop her from doing something rash. You could say I was the husband who acted as a stopper. Amy would puff up her cheeks and say, "I'm not a child anymore. Can you not check up on every little thing I do? It's like you're my guardian, Jaden." She'd retort like that. Every time we had an exchange like a comedic duo, I savored the happiness of being with Amy. And yet, what on earth is this divorce paper and note on the table? This time, I just couldn't understand Amy's feelings. Moreover, she had sent in her resignation to our workplace. I felt a rush of anger. I immediately grabbed my cell phone. I kept calling, but she didn't answer. I hurriedly contacted Amy's parents' house, but it seems she hasn't returned there. Amy's mom, sounding apologetic, handled my call. "I'm really sorry, but since we haven't heard from her either, we don't know what to do." That was true. Once Amy had made up her mind, blaming someone wouldn't change the outcome. In the end, without being able to have a conversation with Amy, I reluctantly submitted the divorce papers 3 months later. It was a bitter decision, persuaded by both my parents and Amy's. 5 years after the divorce from Amy, I became a divorced office worker and threw myself into my editorial work more than ever. Well, it was the only way to distract myself from the loneliness. I was tasked with creating a tourist guide for each state, which took me on a business trip to Napa Valley in California, where Amy's folks live. It was a busy day. I was running around all day with interviews and meetings, and before I knew it, it was evening. After bidding farewell to the interview crew, I began to walk through the bustling night streets. Now that I think about it, I hadn't visited Napa Valley since the divorce from Amy. For some reason, I was hit with a wave of nostalgia and found myself enjoying a leisurely stroll, taking in the ambience around the main station area. That's when it happened. I saw a mom pulling along a little kid. I was gazing absent-mindedly when a shock hit me, and I blurted out without thinking, "Amy, isn't that Amy?" I found myself sneaking peeks at her from a distance, blending into the crowd. Sure enough, it was Amy. And thanks to the kid throwing a fuss, Amy didn't seem to notice me at all. She passed by me while talking to the kid. Watching her, I felt my pride being shredded to pieces. Dark emotions began to swirl inside me. I had struggled so much with the divorce, and yet there was Amy, seemingly remarried and living happily. It had been 5 years, but still. I was honestly shocked at how deeply I was still affected. I thought I had moved on from Amy. Realizing I still harbored feelings for her was painful. But Amy had moved on, started a new life without me. I had to keep telling myself that, trying to force acceptance. Sadly, it just wasn't my place anymore. As I was finally coming to terms with it and about to leave. That instant, "Mommy, Daddy's here," I heard a child's adorable voice and instinctively turned around. There stood Amy with a surprised expression. We both just stood there, unable to move. I couldn't shake off the word daddy from my head. Amy remained silent, looking uncomfortable. I found myself blurting out, "Hey, long time no see, you look well. If you've got a minute, I suggested we go to a diner nearby to talk." Amy nodded. Then I spoke to the child. His name is apparently Joshua. A lively little boy, by the looks of it. We went into a nearby diner and initially exchanged updates about our lives, making small talk though it was awkward. After a while, I confronted Amy with a question that had always bugged me. Why did we even end up divorcing? I can't think of any reason. Amy looked uncomfortable but seemed to make up her mind. Taking a deep breath, she began. "There's something I never got to tell you." My heart was pounding as I waited for her to continue. What could have driven Amy to leave so suddenly? What had I done? "I found out your true feelings. I overheard you telling someone how my presence was a bother, how we married too soon." Even as she was entertaining a playful Joshua, Amy was seriously addressing me. Her voice was becoming tearful. Hearing that, she suddenly felt like she shouldn't be there, and she left the house, she said. I listened intently to Amy's story, but for a moment, I was completely taken aback. I had no recollection of saying such a thing. Did I ever say something I didn't mean? Even when I asked if she might have mistaken me for someone else, she just shook her head. As I was deep in thought, arms crossed, it hit me. Maybe, I've got it. It was that time. I stood up, my voice echoing in the diner. No, it's all a misunderstanding, Amy. I started to explain the situation to a confused Amy in rapid fire. That was about a fictional story for work. You must have overheard and got the wrong idea. You know that Tom from my college days is a writer, right? Amy's expression changed as if she finally caught on, her hand over her mouth. I began to explain Tom's situation. He was trying to be a novelist while working. A man juggling 2 careers. So he often came crying to me, a professional in writing, seeking advice. That day, 5 years ago, Tom was stuck on a story he was submitting for a literary award and called me. Please, don't tell Amy I called. I believe she knows one of the judges professionally. What do you honestly think of my work? I gave him advice impulsively. The protagonist's mindset about considering divorce isn't well captured. If it were me, I'd say I'm frustrated with my wife's presence. Maybe we married too soon. To dig deeper, otherwise, the following text won't be tight enough. Tom wanted to keep the content private, so I deliberately moved to the bedroom to discuss it. Little did I know that at that moment, Amy had come to retrieve something she'd forgotten. She'd overheard my advice and completely misunderstood. After 5 years, I came to learn this shocking truth. Amy's absent-mindedness was both exasperating and laughable. Although Amy tried to laugh it off awkwardly, her misunderstanding had led us to divorce. It's one of those situations where you can only laugh. Really, I'm so sorry for my mistake. Amy apologized, and there was no way I could say it's not your fault. Why hadn't she asked me about it before leaving? It was such a typical Amy misunderstanding. Amy started to share her story bit by bit. After divorcing you, Jaden, I planned to go back to my parents' house, but then I found out I was 2 months pregnant. I couldn't go back to you or my parents. So, she explained her situation to a publishing company she knew and got hired as a contract employee. Amy didn't want to be a burden to her parents, so she rented an apartment and somehow managed to give birth to my child alone. But being a single mom was harder than she'd anticipated. Struggling financially, Amy finally returned to her parents' house. She had cut off contact with them and got an earful when she showed up. I was listening, nearly collapsing from my chair, when I looked at Joshua eating his parfait. This boy is my son. I couldn't help but ask the question that was bugging me the most. Earlier, Joshua called me daddy, right? How does he know? Having never met me, Amy gave an awkward smile, maybe feeling uneasy. For Father's Day at daycare, they draw pictures. When he asked who's my dad, I showed him your photo. That's why he hugged you right away today. Learning so many shocking facts, my mind was in gridlock. Our divorce was based on a misunderstanding, and unknowingly, I had become a father to a son. While I was stunned, I'm really, truly sorry. Because of my assumptions and jumping to conclusions, I messed up your life and caused you trouble. Amy started apologizing fervently. As angry as I was inside, I couldn't help but start to find the humor in the situation. This is one heck of a life story, isn't it? I had always wanted kids from the start of my marriage, and I never wanted to divorce Amy in the first place. It's actually a happy situation for me. Thinking this, I found myself oddly accepting of Amy's wild ways. Me, who used to be so serious and stubborn. Now, not even fazed by having a child I didn't know about. I stopped Amy's earnest apologies and said, "It's okay, just calm down. More importantly, thank you for raising our child on your own these past 5 years. You must have had a tough time. You did well." Watching her tear up, I continued, "I'm sorry for creating a situation that could have made you think I wanted a divorce. I was so busy with work and constant business trips back then. It's not surprising you might suspect me of cheating. Perhaps remembering those times." Amy burst into tears. Yes, I had my faults too. I shouldn't just wrap it up as her jumping to conclusions. I gently suggested to Amy, "Why don't we put the craziness behind us and start over, you, me, and Joshua? What do you say?" As I said this, my wife sobbed. "Are you sure you want me, even though I'm such a scatterbrain? What if I cause trouble for you again?" Amy said. I laughed and said, "What are you talking about now? It's always been like that from the start. My dull life becomes fun and fulfilling only with an interesting twist like you. Let's go get a marriage registration form from the city hall." Hearing my sarcastic remark, a smile finally returned to Amy's face. Joshua, watching us smile, shouted, "Let's go. That's my boy. He knows how to cheer up Amy." The three of us walk hand in hand down the twilight road. To make sure we don't pass by each other again, to make sure we don't part again. That was the moment Amy and I truly became husband and wife. A year has passed since that fateful reunion in Napa Valley. We remarried without a hitch. Back to being the same quirky couple, and Joshua quickly accepted me. Today is Joshua's daycare sports festival. I'm dead set on winning the parent-child race. I'm going to win first prize for my son, who I made feel lonely for 5 years. Amy watches with amusement as I get fired up. Maybe I've treated Amy like a daughter in the past. but now we are each other's important life partners. I make a point to listen to Amy's opinion before making decisions. These past 5 years have been tough, but I'm determined to turn them into happy stories we can joke about. That's my resolve.